Welcome to the 15th episode of the second season of The Pulpiteer. I'm your host, Eric Hepburn, and I'm glad to have you join us for today's episode. Today's episode is called Ofrenda, which is the Spanish word for offering. Here it refers to the Mexican tradition of an altar for Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, traditionally celebrated on the first and second days in November. A special thanks this week to Kelly McGinty and Heather McCare, who have tended and organized the Ofrenda in our sanctuary. Okay, let's get started with some reflections from me and then our word of wisdom delivered by Kelly McGinty. The ritual of Dia de los Muertos as a sacred tradition, the beginnings of which predate Christian colonization and are rooted in the indigenous cultures of Mesoamerica, including Mayan and Aztec influences. Appropriation is a symptom of colonialist ways of thinking and stealing and corrupting. And the antidote to that is to hold at the center our love and longing for the stranger, our deep acknowledgement of their humanity and spiritual wisdom, so that we might learn from them and strengthen our common bonds. I'm going to invite us now into a second moment of silence for all the indigenous peoples who gave their lives and energy to preserve their traditions and the traditions of their people by hiding them in Catholic garb. In gratitude, they have kept this sacred tradition of ancestor acknowledgement and inclusion alive so that we have the blessing of sharing this ritual today. I had the honor yesterday of officiating a memorial service up in Lott, Texas, which is outside of Temple, for a native Austinite who was a scholar, professor of Native American art. And a line from that service comes back to me this morning as being relevant. But then I forgot what the line was. Well, there's always more than one way to turn a sacred moment. I was talking to one of my colleagues this morning. There's a lot going on today, and I said, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I'll try and hold that yearning in my heart to shade my deep embarrassment over walking into a trap I laid myself and then not knowing the way out.
Let us enter a still place within, opening our hearts and minds to receive this voice of wisdom. After the words are spoken, we will breathe together in silence, preparing ourselves for the word unfolding among us. For the reading today, I've selected an excerpt out of Llewellyn's Little Book of the Day of the Dead. It is written by Jaime Girones. It's a really lovely book. I've had it out on the Ofrenda since the beginning. I think it does a really nice job of kind of summarizing the spirit of the thing. So I'm going to read the first paragraph and the last couple of paragraphs of this book. Author's note. As this book about a traditional Mexican holiday, Dia de los Muertos, I find it necessary to mention the topic of cultural appropriation, its difference from cultural appreciation, and my opinion of these when celebrating the Day of the Dead if you are not of Mexican heritage. Cultural appropriation is when some aspects of a culture are taken and then used for selfish or disrespectful purposes. Cultural appreciation is when a culture and its aspects are honored in a respectful way. The popular tradition sees the Day of the Dead as a moment when our ancestors and dead loved ones visit us. However, it is my personal belief that it is not exactly a visit. They have never left us. During this time of the year, the veil between the living and the dead becomes thinner, so we feel them closer. They are always with us, in our hearts and in our spirit. We can remember them and honor them throughout the year, and the best way of doing so is to live the best lives that we can. Let's celebrate that we are alive. In honor of those who have died and blessed our life, let's enjoy the life we inherited from our ancestors, as we would not be here now if it was not for them. Be grateful for what we have had and what we have today. Love, care for, and respect the people who are alive and present in our lives, as we never know when the last opportunity will be. The best way to honor our ancestors is to every day try to become a better person, creating a better version of ourselves and a better version of the world. We often think of our ancestors and other people who came before us as if our state will remain constant. The ancestors and us, the dead and the living. However, we will be somebody else's ancestor one day, either of blood, of place, or of spirit. Even if we do not plan to have children of our own, our actions today will create possibilities for the people of tomorrow. Our ancestors had their ancestors when they were alive, and so we are yet to be ancestors of our land and of our world. Let's start protecting and cherishing our land and our community today and creating a better world for the people of tomorrow. Blessed is life. Blessed is death. Blessed is the cycle of life and death. Merry meet, merry part, merry meet again. What is remembered does live.
So, I want to start our unfolding of word this morning with a prompt that I think centers the Western problem that the wisdom of the Ofrenda offers to heal for us. For those of you who've heard me preach on death before, you will not be surprised to hear me say that these come from the work of Stephen Jenkinson. Who are the dead to us? The dead are gone. That is what they are. What really binds them in the horizontal imagination of contemporary people is that both of them, God and the dead, are gone. They meet somewhere else, not here, not now, not among us. And so we live with no obligations, no duty, no purpose where our dead are concerned. Every day we turn away from our dead. They're not really our dead at all anymore. They're the dead instead. Think of every funeral or memorial service you've been to. How many times were the dead spoken to instead of being spoken about? Not often, probably. How many times were the dead beckoned and courted and invited to the event? How many times did you carry yourself as if the dead were there? It isn't likely that you did. How many times was the ceremony for the dead? And how many times was the ceremony conducted as if all of you living figured enormously in how it was and how it was to be for the dead? Alas, certainly not often enough for them or for us. The Ofrenda is an embodiment of a different kind of theology. One of the toxic residues of Christianity as we know it is this idea that the church and Jesus and God were somehow inserted in between us and our ancestors, us and our dead, as intermediaries, as if direct communication were forbidden. And so ancestor worship was high on the list of things that the early Christians seek to stamp out as they turned into imperial colonialists who wished to show up and say, well, sure, you have spiritual and religious beliefs. They're just not the right ones. And so we're going to replace them with ours, which we know to be superior. Sorry, I can't say that straight-faced. It's laughable, isn't it? Really. I mean, the level of egotism is both readily recognizable and more than a little bit laughable. The idea that you meet another people with a life and a history and a story and a legacy and an ancestry different than yours, and your first fearful assumption is that you better prove you're better than they are. It's amazing to me that so many ancient wisdom cultures saw the wisdom of humanity before they even had the benefit of understanding the science of DNA. They intuited what science has now proven, that we're all siblings and brothers and sisters. And not just us bipedal Homo sapiens, but the frogs and the trees are at best second cousins, at worst third or fourth cousins. There is only one form of life on this planet, folks, and you are but one small expression of that. We are siblings and brothers and sisters. And we are enmeshed in this web of life so deeply that escape is not a hope, it's a toxic illusion. But we think of the history of Western civilization as one that attempted to catapult us out of the animal realm, to claim that we are no longer subject to such earthly foibles and needs, that we are above it all in our superiority. And that superiority over the animal kingdom just wasn't enough for the good old ego, so it had to come up with a version where, well, even among our tribes, there must be such a hierarchy of superiority and who's best and who's not. But I run wide of my topic today. Perhaps we cannot embrace the humility we need unless we can clearly outline the hubris that is its opposite. So, what does the intersection between DNA and the Dia de los Muertos traditions look like? Common ancestry. If you go back far enough, we are all part of the same family tree. And if we are second cousins to each other, then our ancestors were first cousins. And back a little further, they were siblings. And what else is a cousin but a sibling of a sibling who deserves similar treatment? Cain and Abel might argue about it, but you can't steal something freely given by your brother or your sister or your sibling. And all the greatest wisdom traditions have always believed in giving that wisdom out for free. And so, with open hands and hearts, we accept this ofrenda as a gift of wisdom from a culture that helped us prove yet again that genocide is an injury, but almost never an actual ending. It is an embodied theology, the Ofrenda. It is the light between worlds. It is the light that remembers us and never goes out, which might be a way of describing God. It might be a way of describing love. It might be a way of describing the life in and beyond all the various forms of life. That light that remembers us and never goes out. That light that is us. That light that is our ancestors. So the ofrenda is an altar that shines both ways. It is a beacon from the living to invite the dead through memory, through storytelling, through inspiration to come and share their light, their wisdom with us once more, to remind them that they are missed and that we are actively engaged in the missing, in the longing. One of Stephen Jenkinson's, one of my favorite lines of his, hopefully I won't forget this one before I spit it out. He has a line, he says, some toxic theologies put out there the idea that God is doing fine no matter how we're doing. When you combine omniscient and omnipotent and omnipresent together, there's an idea in there that God's going to do fine no matter how we do. Well, friends, that's not my theology. I think that God is omnipresent, but neither omniscient nor omnipotent. And therefore, God's doing exactly how we're doing. And our ancestors who have left this plane and whose light has rejoined God's light, they're doing how we're doing. And we are doing how they're doing. When I am deep in ceremony, I can feel the well of sorrow too big for my own chest. And I know that it's not my sorrow alone. It's the sorrow of God and the ancestors who do wish and have wished and will keep wishing for better for us than we do for ourselves. Who see the hurt that we portray against one another. Who see that we human beings are still the biggest cause of each other's and our own suffering. As if life and the universe and everything weren't hard enough without us hurting each other. When we get past ego, we enter a space where we realize that some of the things we left on the cutting room floor when we were sure that we could solve every problem with our brilliant minds, that some of the things we left on the cutting room floor were worth reclaiming. The wisdom of that altar in the back of the room is one of those. Let me tell you why I think so. If we unpeel the overlaid Catholicism and go back to the earlier indigenous beliefs, there are two important things that I want to put on your radar. And I struggled with whether these were the right things for an all-ages service, but I think that the young, even if they don't understand, must hear whispers, even at a young age, to know that what I'm about to tell you is possible for them too. The first one, becoming an ancestor was not guaranteed. Becoming an ancestor was not the inevitable consequence of dying. It required a good death, a wise death, It required having built the relationships in your community that resulted in a critical mass of human beings who were willing to mourn you across the river of stars and into the afterlife so that the light you cultivated in your life could shine through from the afterlife and be a guide and a beacon to those who came after. It wasn't a guarantee. It was an earned privilege to become an ancestor. And the path to ancestorhood was through wise elderhood. Now, in the journey of life, our spiritual window gets fogged and covered over, and sometimes we have a hard time seeing the light of love and the light of divine through the traumas and the scars and the smudges on our glass. And when we do spiritual practices, when we heal our traumas, when we show up in ways that are compassionate and helpful, we take our sleeve and wipe a little bit of the grime off that window. And if we do that enough, if we show up to the chapter of our life that we're on enough, if we show up to the trauma when it happens so that we're not passing that trauma on to our children, but healing it in ourselves, every time we do that, we clear the glass a little bit and the light of the divine can shine into our lives and through our lives into the lives of those we love a little more clearly. And if we've done enough work, we are translucent enough at the end that a graveyard will feel like it did yesterday in Lott, Texas, with people deeply sad to see us gone. Enough people willing to shed tears over the loss of us that we might get to journey across the sea of stars and become an ancestor reunited with the divine. Now raised on a heaven and hell theology, you're all thinking, maybe not all, but some of you are thinking, in this dichotomous vision, Mr. Hepburn, where, but oh where, did the non-wise ancestors go? You are not painting a picture of hell from a universalist pulpit, are you, sir? No, dear folks, I am not. The cosmology about that is easier expressed through Hindu terms, and it looks a little bit like purgatory and reincarnation. So in the native traditions from which the Ofrenda springs, one of the things that happens is that people can become hungry ghosts. They get trapped on this side of the river of stars if there aren't enough people to mourn them across. And then there's a new chance for rebirth that comes, because when someone who has really done an outstanding job of cleaning their glass dies, they might recognize that there are a few hungry ghosts in their village causing mischief, and they offer to take them with them because they know they're going to have more tears than they need. And so the opportunity again for generosity and kindness and inclusion and invitation opens itself up, and those souls get a new chance to do this thing again. And that's all the universalists were really on about when they railed against hell. They said, surely not condemned for all time. Surely no good God, no good parent, no source of love and light would think that that sounds like justice. So whether you're 5 years old or 75 years old, whether you're 15 or 50, I want you to walk away from today with just one thought. How do I show up to my life in a way that makes me a worthy ancestor to those who come next? How do I show up to my life, to this chapter I'm on, the chapters that came before I have no control over? But right now, starting from this day, What is life asking for me so that I can be an honored ancestor and leave a legacy behind that is worthy of those who will come after? There is one worldview that says that we pass this world on to our children. There's another worldview that says that we borrow it from them. I think both are true in interesting and unique and profound ways. The light that remembers us never goes out. We talk about that in our own chalice, don't we? The light of truth that burns all else away, and the love that endures. I invite you to this pathway of wise elderhood to help me discover it. I don't know its secrets yet. I don't know its twists and turns, but I think together we do. And I am grateful beyond words for all of you and the generous spirit of this community. And I wouldn't be wanting to do this work anywhere else. Thank you and amen. Until next time, thank you for joining us on The Pulpiteer. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can help others find it by liking and subscribing. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can make a donation at sangabrieluu.org/give. The Pulpiteer Podcast is a production of the San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Georgetown, Texas. The podcast is hosted by Spotify, and theme music is by John Faber. Our live recording tech crew this week was Frank Sanders, Rob Berthold, Keith Hutchinson, and Andrew McDaniel. The podcast is produced and performed by Eric Hepburn.